Checkout tracking by the NPD Group brings you a receipt collecting system that gathers data anonymously through technology we created, providing your businesses with answers.
All right, so hey everyone. Taylor, who's works with Nick, I was sitting at dinner with him last night, and he said to kind of rev up my act that I should start with a dance. But I'm going to do you a huge favor and not do that. But I do want to start with a little bit of audience participation, just kind of see where you guys are at so I can kind of gear the discussion. First of all, who has tried consumer-grade VR, say in the last 12 months, say Oculus Rift, Google Cardboard, Samsung Gear VR? Cool. Who has specifically tried mobile VR, so Gear VR, Cardboard? Okay, so a little bit more than half the people in the room. So most people fairly familiar with it, but I'll kind of talk also for the people who may not have experienced it yet. So I'm Andrew Trickett. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Merge VR. And what I want to do is not make this so much a product pitch, although I will be describing what we're bringing to market, but also kind of talk about why we're doing what we're doing and what the wonderful opportunity is for you as developers of casual experiences, which is kind of the theme of this whole conference, why we're all here. And I think also following along a lot of the remarks that Nicole made, for those of you who sat in the last session. It was a great session. And we completely agree that there's justifiably a lot of excitement about the Oculus Rift, what Valve is doing, what HTC and Valve are doing together, and what Sony is doing. But we really think that the casual market is probably going to move faster, and it's going to be the larger opportunity when you talk about any kind of stereoscopic experience, whether that's virtual reality, augmented reality, or 3D video, whether that's just straight 3D or 360 video. And there's a lot of research that's kind of starting to hit the street recently here in the last couple of months. One of our favorite sources is K0. And if you look at this, not only do you see the growth of VR exploding, predicted to explode over the next couple of years, but what's really interesting to me is look at the components of this. When you look at the innovators, which is at the bottom, kind of the hardcore gamers, versus the rest of the market, which if you look at light gamers, and KT&T stands for kids, teens, and tweens, that's far more casual usage, kind of like the 5 to 20 minute experience. Think more Angry Birds rather than Halo or Call of Duty. And you look at that's where the vast majority of the market is going to be. How many of you are familiar with this famous chart? It's from Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. Is this a familiar concept? Yes? No? Okay. Since most of you haven't seen it, let me just kind of, I won't do it justice, but very briefly. This has become kind of the Bible, if you're a technology-based startup, to describe how any new technology starts to get adopted over time. And it starts out, on the left-hand side of the chart with what do you call the innovators and the early adopters, and then there's the rest of the market, which is described as first as the early majority, then the late majority, then the laggards. And the premise, and this is played out in a lot of technologies and a lot of individual startups, is it's called the chasm because what happens is it's easy to get fooled by the excitement that's generated when a new technology, a new wave, a new kind of offering comes out, and the companies that are offering it, and they get fooled that that's what the rest of the market looks like, but it's not true. What happens when you get beyond kind of the gadget guys, the technophiles like me, like I'm sure many of you in the room, and you get into what does the rest of the mass market look like? People like my sister, who's a very intelligent woman, but I use her as the benchmark because she's an intelligent person, but she is like how early majority and late majority customers act, and they're very different. And if you don't realize the difference between a gadget for the early adopters versus what the mass market needs, it's not going to go well. So specifically, what's the difference between casual VR and what's kind of got the market ignited? Is that, first of all, it does have to be high quality, but affordability becomes an incredibly important factor. Secondly, and this is where the vast majority of new technologies fail to cross the chasm, is they have to be incredibly easy right out of the box. The mass market has no tolerance for difficulty. They want it to be handed to them. They don't want to have to do things like Nicole was describing, put on something, measure your IPD, and go through a configuration screen. They want it to all be set up for them, done automatically for them. And this needs to pervade every aspect of their experience as far as whether it's the game itself or the hardware that they're using. And so that's really driving a lot of what we're trying to do in the decisions that we made, and some of them may appear a little bit odd, but it's why we're doing what we're doing. And I would say, you know, kind of encourage you as app developers, content creators, is that this is phenomenally important if you really want to have mass penetration out in the fat part of, you know, the market's the great opportunity for all of us. Another thing is that they really want to have, in the research that we've done, the feedback that we've gotten, is we started out with just the headset, but we started getting more and more feedback that they really want inputs and be able to kind of move around naturally, because, you know, I've been around on Earth long enough to remember when I started my professional career and it was DOS line inputs. Before there was a mouse that enabled even complex 2D motion, natural 2D motion, or even Windows with a lowercase w, the whole GUI of how do I get around in terms of getting in and out of menus and making selections and deselections and jumping around. And we're finding that, you know, we're kind of at that DOS moment right now still in virtual reality, where there isn't really a standard way of how you interact with a 3D world, or how you even fundamentally get around and make choices and get in and out of areas in a 3D world. And so we're trying to solve that as well. Then when you get beyond, you know, something, you know, the gadgets that are used for, you know, for the novelty value, and something that's going to be used by the masses, by a lot of different people, which includes kids, as well as, you know, just kind of human beings who drop phones and, you know, spill liquids on things, is a lot of other things come into play. Considerations beyond what's the field of view, what's the frame rate, what's the latency. And it's things like, is it comfortable or is it not? Is it something that's durable? If I drop it, will it break or will it not? And something that the industry's, VR industry is starting to wake up to is the fact that you wear these devices on your face, right? So hygiene really matters, particularly when you're kind of doing demos. You know, something that, hey, does this trap sweat? Does this trap you know, makeup? Does this trap contaminants when it's dropped? Can you clean it or can you not? You know, this is the most personal and sensitive part of who we are, you know, on our bodies. You know, the hygiene is really starting to become an issue, and I predict it will become a much bigger issue as VR goes mainstream. So what are we doing? We're trying to solve all this. I'm not, you know, not going to pretend that we have licked every problem, but the way that we're going about it, and the way that we're trying to also engage with developers to kind of, you know, let you know what we're trying to do and what you can leverage, is it's a hardware software platform that has a couple of different major pieces, and I'm going to run through each one of these. But it's basically a head-mounted display that we call the Merge goggles. It's an integrated controller, natural motion sensing controller. Then those are the two hardware pieces. The two software pieces are a mobile app that we call Merge Start, and then of course the software development kit for our content creators. And I actually brought with me the current prototypes. We're going into production right now. We're tooling up, and the first ones are going to be coming out very soon. I don't want to front run our press release, but in the incredibly immediate future, we'll be announcing those, and they'll start to become available for developers and also for the mass market. So, but our current state of prototypes, I actually brought one with me, is the Merge goggles. So this is what you can see here, and we're actually trademarked the phrase any phone, any face for a reason. The first thing is with the slot and also with the software development kit. We support pretty much 90+% of the smartphones that have been sold, at least in the US market, for the last 2 years. So whether it's an iPhone or you could say iPod Touch as well, or an Android device. And by rough parameters, anything from the iPhone 5 and newer and its comparables on the Android side. And as far as what will fit in the slot, this does fit an iPhone 6 Plus. Fits a Note 4 is actually shorter. The only name phone that we don't support is what's called the Google Nexus 6, which is really a tablet. But you know, 95% of the phones will fit in here, and we also support them from a software point of view. The first thing everyone notices is the purple, but also that it's made out of a very high-end foam formulation. We kind of call it the Tempur-Pedic of head-mounted displays. But it actually has, and people react to it viscerally, it's got kind of a fun form factor, but it actually has a number of very important utilitarian advantages that are very important for you as the developers. First of all is the ability to kind of support any phone, and its basic little touches like, you know, you don't have to set it up and level it in the center. You just kind of put the phone in there, drop it in, and everything's done for you. It's like bread in a toaster. Whereas, you know, and that's important because with some of the other devices out there, if you get a little bit crooked or it's off center, the image is not going to display correctly. The other thing that it does is it flexes to fit around the face. And if you wear glasses, it'll accommodate glasses. So it kind of gives you that, it really envelops the face to make you feel immersed. You know, it doesn't let light stream in, which is a big part of, being, kind of willing to do that suspension of disbelief, which is key to these experiences, right? Something that we're adding, it's not on this particular prototype, but we're actually adding some capacitive style inputs. So think of it as like a plunger. When you press down on the lens adjusters, there's going to be a mechanical transfer, so soft stylus will poke the screen. And that has a couple of advantages. One is that you're going to, as a developer, you'll have two at your disposal, an A button and a B button. Another thing that it does is that when you adjust the lenses to match the user's interpupillary distance, something that Nicole mentioned and I brought up a little bit earlier is that there's no image setup for the user, because when you move the lenses and press down, the stylus touches the screen and we now pretty much know exactly where your pupils are at. And we know what your phone is. So we can dynamically and passively, as far as the user's concerned, is place the images right over your pupils, start the distortion right over your pupils. And that's actually a patent pending technology that we have. And it's all part of the experience. Like, we don't want the user to have to go through a lot of setup. We want them to be able to open the box, turn on the controller, adjust the lenses, press, and they're ready to go. Everything's just done for them right out of the box. Another thing it does here is that you'll see that it has a dock for the controller, which is not just a convenience device, but when you're thinking about video and even maybe some gameplays, you may want to have some games where the controller is docked on the headset and you have these buttons at your disposal. But we also made them, different shapes for a reason, because that looks like the play, pause, fast forward, play, pause, rewind for video. The other thing that it does is when the controller is docked in the headset, the controller takes over the head tracking, and all of the head tracking algorithms. So speaking of, kind of talk a bit about the controller. With this guy is, Nick was kind enough to kind of front run me on that. This is a 9-axis motion sensing controller. So you can kind of think of it operates like a Wii, only it actually has 9 degrees of freedom rather than 6. So tracks motion, tracks acceleration. We capture all of that, and we're doing it all on the circuit board within the controller. So we only have to send a small amount of data through our SDK to be ingested by the application. And so what that does, we're actually able to do it through Bluetooth LE, so it has a long battery life, and also it's very lightweight data packet that's being sent back, so it really improves the communication. And we're now at the point where we can actually send data faster than the phones can ingest it. That's kind of where we've really fine-tuned it. But what you have as a developer is 9 different buttons to play with, and you kind of see them on there. But the A, B, X, Y joystick in the form factor of an analog thumb slider, front back trigger, and then a universal home button that I'll talk about that in just a second. It's set up for the ergonomics for both wand style play, as well as turn it on the side and you can do standard gamepad style play. Each one of the buttons has a different shape. So one of those small touches that when you have this on, you don't want to have to keep doing this to see the button. You kind of feel for the right shape. Do I want the circle button? Do I want the up arrow, the diamond, the down arrow button? And I did mention previously that it docks inside the headset. As far as the software pieces, one app that we, the very first thing that you'll do is you'll download what's called the Merge Start app. And that has 2 very important functions for the developer and also for the user. The first one is that if you've already downloaded several Merge compatible apps, this is a way that the user kind of jump in and out of different apps without having to take off the headset, without having to take off the phone. And the universal home button just kind of takes them back to Merge Start and enables that. The other thing that it does is that this serves as our discovery portal, in which we're working with our launch partner developers, and we're going to put front and center and give them the vast majority of the marketing love, and we're going to vouch for these apps that they're high quality art, high quality mechanics, they have integrity, they follow best practices in terms of what Nicole was talking about in terms of design, that they're comfortable, they're age appropriate, for whatever age that particular user is. And we're going to be featuring our launch partners in that, and so it helps solve the discovery issue, which is the #1 issue that you have as content developers. Because what we're trying to do is build a brand for featuring the very best apps that are available to the user. But it does use the existing App Store purchasing, particularly from iTunes and Google Play, so it's something that's very familiar to the user. They already have an account, they already have the payment system set up, so we're just trying to make it all very easy and very comfortable for the user in a lot of different dimensions. So why am I here today? To recruit more developers to our movement. And kind of what's in it for you is we are going to be on shelves this year. We're in the midst of, matter of fact, we're in the final stages of lining up our brick and mortar distribution. We have lots of distributors as well as direct retailers that we're dealing with. Has anyone here heard of the Amazon Launchpad program? You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of a new program they announced a couple of weeks ago where they're going to be featuring essentially hot gadgets from cool startups, and we've been invited into that program. So we're going to have the e-commerce element as well as physical distribution. And we are in the midst, we've already been very successful in securing great partners, whether, acclaimed VR apps, some of the ones that Nicole was mentioning have committed to our platform. And also for those of you who do video, we're very much looking for video as well as games. That's a big part of what we're trying to do, because as we did, here's been a really interesting finding as we've done our research. When we asked people, how would you use this device, how would you use it, really any VR device, as many people said that they would use it for short form video and general entertainment as for gaming. And I found it to be a really interesting finding. We will be announcing a top Hollywood movie that we partnered with and is doing a special build for our platform here in the near future. I don't want to front run that press release. And it's going to be a broad array of games. I love shooters as much as anyone else, but we want to make sure that we're having RPGs, exploration games, edutainment, as well a broad array of different types of experiences so that we as a community can let the user know that this is the next rate digital platform. It's not just a gaming device. There's a lot of different types of experiences that are available through these types of platforms. And kind of the good news, bad news is we've had so much demand from developers that our supply of dev kits is kind of running behind that. But we're making more now. We're actually factory producing them. So we'll have more here in just a couple weeks for those that want to work with us. And for those of you who would like to work with us, this is my contact information. I'm Andrew Trickett at mergevr.com. You can hit me there or on Twitter at mergevr. So that's enough of me talking, and happy to take any questions.
What's the price?
Yep.
Well, questions into the mic so we can get them recorded.
What's the price for the device?
Yep. So we're finalizing the price, but what I'll tell you is that what we're aiming for is that when you kind of look at the price of comparable devices out there, the bundle of the headset plus the controller, we publicly announced that would be under $130. One of the things that we're looking at also doing is making the SKU of the headset available by itself, and that will be well under $100. I'll kind of put it that way, but just to kind of give you an idea of when you kind of compare it to the Samsung Gear VR, it'll be about half the price, only you can use any phone, and you'll also have this controller.
Other questions?
Just a quick one. I hadn't heard 9 degrees of freedom before because I thought 6 degrees covered every kind of motion.
Sorry, I meant 9-axis motion sensing.
What are the other 3 axes besides forward, backward, left, right, up, down, and then the 3 rotational ones?
All right, so you have the, let's see if I can get this right, because I'm the non-technical founder, as you'll quickly find out. So what we have in here is pretty much what you would have in the headset for head tracking. So you have accelerometer, magnetometer, and compass. Okay. So you have, those are your 3 different axes for your 3 different types of inputs.
Okay,
and
so
the
the
sensor
extra
fusion.
The extra 3 are a magnetometer,
correct.
not, okay.
Yeah. It doesn't do time travel. No. Not yet. That's version 2. Right. Please.
Thanks. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
First of all, can we pre-order one today?
Not today, but very soon. So stay tuned. Yeah.
And then, actually, I have 3 questions. Sorry. Second question is, will apps developed for Cardboard work on your platform?
Yeah, excellent question. So let me answer your question in 2 ways. The first thing is, I'll just say, kind of as a dumb viewer, yes, because of the inputs that we're adding. If you took a Cardboard app, loaded, activated it, put it in here, and started interacting with it, yes, you can view it and interact with it with our headset. If you want to take advantage of the Merge SDK, which is now kind of with the controller, and let's even take that out with just with the headset inputs, the image configuration setup, and being part of Merge Start. I mean, the effort to do that, we did get a couple of experimentations this week, and they've been done in less than an hour, less than a day. It's in terms of the developer ROI, we're not trying to just improve your R, but we're trying to make that investment as small as possible. And we've even ported Rift apps in like less than an hour.
Sorry, my third question was just about what kind of how much motion sickness there's been in the testing to this point.
I thought you guys are going to find this hard to believe, but we've been astonished by how many people have told us they get less motion sickness in this than they do in some of the higher end devices. I'm not a VR scientist, so I don't know exactly why that is, but I actually think that in some ways a slightly smaller field of view contributes to that. And I think some of that, kind of the joking analogy that I make is that when I was a college student and would occasionally, have a big night out, and you drink way too much and the room is spinning and you kind of plant your foot on the floor to stop the room from spinning. That maybe a little bit smaller field of view helps with that in terms of anchoring on rather being completely lost in that artificial world in a way that you can't escape. That's my amateur hypothesis on it.
Thanks.
And you can quote me. Yeah. That's right. That's right. You can quote.
Any other questions? No?
Great. And
All right.
Happy
Awesome.
to do demos. I'll be around.
Go check out the demo. They're awesome. Let's give it up for Andrew Trickett.